This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English, episode number 248, baby. Oh yeah. In today's episode we have another one of the episodes of speaking to other teachers, podcasters, YouTubers, and I speak to Charlie Baxter from the British English podcast. If you have heard that name before, yes, he has been on before. I think this is the third time he has been on, but Charlie is very much a rock and roll English kind of guy, so that's why he is on again. And we speak about British culture. He does the British English podcast, British culture. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? First of all, apologies for the delay in releasing this episode. It is a few hours late. I'm very sorry. I normally like to stick to the times of releasing this at midnight so you can listen to it on your way to work. But unfortunately, this week, family life kind of got in the way of the podcast. But anyway, here is the episode where I speak to Charlie about the royal family, the sports people play in England, discrimination in English breakfasts, BYOB, and the most important thing of all, carpets. Here is the episode. Happy listening. So hello Charlie and welcome again to Rock and Roll English.
Hello Martin, thank you very much for having me. It's an honour to be here.
Well, it's an honour to have you. The third time you have been on, the hat trick, okay? That is, well, an achievement in itself. So well done for that.
Yeah, a hat trick. Yeah, that's a word that is used in football, and that's what we did on my podcast. All about football, didn't we?
Exactly. I was going to mention that earlier, but I see you only waited 10 seconds to promote your podcast, but...
Guys, I've got a podcast, if you wanted to know.
Great podcast. Actually, speaking of your podcast, which is called the British English Podcast, that actually kind of brings us to what we're talking about, because on Charlie's podcast, he speaks about all things British, looks at different parts of culture. So I thought we could have like a general look about British culture, okay? And I've got a few things here which I found on British websites. On websites in general, and we can say whether they're true or not, okay?
Nice.
So all of these things about British culture. The first thing I thought we should talk about is what do we mean by British? Because I have a friend who is very Scottish, let's say, like almost too Scottish, okay? And if I ever say anything to her about like our culture together, she very much tells me where to go. So basically tells me to fuck off because England's totally different to Scotland. So what do you think? And another question, do you see yourself as English or British?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot to unpack there. But I think we've both read the book Watching the English. Have you read that book?
You're making me seem even more uncultured than I am.
I didn't mean for that. I thought you had said it a previous episode. Anyway, so there's a very useful book all about British culture, and this author goes through Englishness and Britishness, right. And she comes up with the idea that, you know, we should really be talking about Englishness when talking about the culture here in terms of being polite, and then the North versus the South, and all of these other things that we like to talk about when we think about things around the UK, maybe. But my theory is that Scottish people and Welsh people and Northern Irish people have an identity of their own, whereas English people kind of assume that what Englishness is British, which is not right. But I feel like we don't have this united English unless it's football we're talking about.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's a good point, actually, because, I think, well, even going further than that, so many English people, often maybe the people that voted for Brexit, think basically the whole world is like England as well, and they have difficulty. For example, they go on holiday to Spain and say, why aren't people speaking English? so yeah, I certainly think they obviously think the same about like Scotland, Wales, etc. So a valid point there. Okay, so another one. So I've got some things here. It says, well, it actually says England is famous for, not British, but as we just mentioned, let's not get too far into that. It says England is famous for its carpets. Now, certainly in Italy, carpets are considered quite disgusting because they say they get dirty, and it's one of the things they kind of laugh at us about. What are your thoughts on carpets? Strange question that, I know.
I love it. I love that kind of question. Have you got a favourite carpet? Okay, I reckon it might be something to do with climate and maybe royalty. I don't know if the royals or the nobles sort of thought it was wealthy to have a carpet and it kind of prolonged. I don't know. I'm guessing there.
Like a red carpet, like the Queen's got a red carpet, even going to her bed. Like she has to walk to her bed on a red carpet.
Do not touch the wooden floor. Yeah, exactly. So it might be that, but I reckon it might also be to do with the insulation, like functional.
Yeah, I agree. Although I think it is starting to change. I've noticed some like friends, like even at my mum's house, like, I mean, there are still carpets in the bedrooms. I think it's essential to have a carpet, but I've noticed like in living rooms and stuff like that, they're starting to go. The carpets are going.
The carpets are being ripped up. It's true. Yeah. And we've got lovely floorboards under there, just waiting to be shown off. Yeah, I think that's a trend that's coming back. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. Some of the best floorboards you will ever see. So it says here as well that English people are famous for being polite. Okay. Now, again, I see this a lot. But again, if you spend time in England, I mean, I was talking on your podcast about like football hooligans and stuff like that. I often don't see many people being polite in those situations. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts would be that it's the cultural norm to not be direct, but that doesn't mean that we're like kind of the spectrum of Japanese polite, where they're like really respectful. I think we've lost the respect and we are just indirect. So it's like annoying, but not polite. Do you know what I mean?
The best combination, that annoying but not polite.
Yeah.
The kids of today. Hey, I think the new generation it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Obviously, well, for example, really random thought, but if you're in a room with people and the window is open and you're cold, would you be likely to say, "I'm closing that window"? Like, I assume maybe a Russian
that's too
might
much,
say.
Isn't it?
or would you say, "Is anyone else cold?"
So it depends how well you know the people in the room. Because if I were with like really close friends, I would say, "I'm closing the window. I don't give a fuck what you think."
Or maybe even you would say, "Close that window, mate."
Yeah, exactly. Do me a favour, close the window. But when you're with people you don't know so well, then of course you have to say, like, "Does anyone mind if I close the window?"
Yeah. Maybe that's like coming down from the old poshness that we have in like the class-based system. So we've got that politeness / posh that kind of comes down, but we're not. Most people don't think of ourselves as the Queen.
No, exactly. And even this is one thing on my list, like royalty. It says English people are famous for the royal family, and English people adore the royal family. Now, I've made my feelings quite clear on this podcast that that's certainly not the case for me. But what about you? Because I always think about when you talk about culture, you only see it from your point of view. Like, and you only grow up once, kind of thing. So if people around you don't particularly like the royal family. So in my mind, that's not true. But then someone else who grows up in a family that love the royal family would say, obviously, that that's totally true. So what about you?
Yeah, I know what you mean about that. I would say that they're quite a good tourist attraction. Like, so many people come and are obsessed with the royal family, and I reckon they pull in a bit of money. I'd love to do a spreadsheet of how much they cost us and how much they bring into the country.
There are various statistics about this. What I say to the tourism thing, though, is I say, for example, Rome still brings in a lot of tourists, okay? The Colosseum, but there are no gladiators there. They go there. So I think if we, kicked her out of the palace kind of thing, opened up Buckingham Palace, like, people would still come. That's what I think.
I would counter that by saying the Colosseum is more of an impressive building to go and see. I feel like people like to feel like they're close to the Queen. Like, I went to the Queen's house.
But I mean, I've never done this, but you can't actually go inside Buckingham Palace, can you?
You can't go and have breakfast with them, no. I think there are actually tours that go in
there are.
Some parts of it.
Right. Okay.
Sometimes, maybe, for very important people. But maybe not Meghan Markle anymore.
Right, exactly, yeah. She's not allowed in. Okay, so let me try and think what else I've got on my list. I always have the most disorganised notes for these things. Okay, probably. What am I going to go for? Right, I'll go for. Done that one. Okay, so the next one is, again, all kind of connected to this being polite stuff. Is being formal. Okay, so I find this, it's quite strange, certainly in comparison to Italian, say, where they have like a specific way to speak to someone you don't know, like specific greetings. Whilst in England, I mean, it's always just hello, really, isn't it? Like, even if I met the Queen, like, what would you say to the Queen? What would be your greeting?
Good day, madam. It's an honor. It's an honor to meet you. I mean, the Queen, though, this is such an extreme, and we're only helping the stereotype of everyone that's English meets the Queen.
Also true. Okay, so you've got a job interview. Probably let's tone it down a little bit. You've got a job interview. Someone walks into the room. What's the first thing you say?
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, or just like hello, nice to meet you. No, it's
yeah. Hello, nice to meet you. Yeah, there's no formal linguistic form of hello in terms of you are my elder.
Maybe I'd go for hello instead of hi, but I mean that's about as far as it goes. And so like the Mr. and Mrs. So like, okay, when you're a kid and you're talking to your friend's parents, like I would never have said like hello, Mrs. Baxter, for example. Like that's just way too formal.
It's true. Yeah, that would be odd. But then I feel like, okay, so we don't have that like higher level of formality, but we do feel like it's a bit weird if you were like, all right, Lizzie, how's it going? So like we understand formal versus informal, but formal's kind of just like a less formal version of formal, and informal very informal.
Saying that though, one of my friends who on the podcast, Corporal Coma, his mum, Debs, as I call her, we are on very much first name, nickname basis. Even when I was a kid, I was round there. All right, Debs, how's it going? Yeah.
Well, this shows your Essex background, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it does very much. And another one here is that it says, if you are invited to the home of a native British person, it is normal to bring along a gift. Do you do this? Is this a thing? Do all of my friends think, why the fuck does he never bring me a gift?
Can you give me a couple of examples where you experience going to a place, and I'll tell you whether I'd bring a gift or not?
So going round friends for dinner.
Is it you and your partner and they are hosting a dinner and it's just the four of you?
Okay, so no, just a friend, just male friend. He's cooking dinner, which is something that is, now I think about it, never happened to me in my life. A male friend has invited me round for dinner. So probably not the best example. But just
he's invited you round to watch the football with some beers. I wouldn't come empty-handed. I would come with some beers, but they're probably for me and him a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. It would definitely be, what is it, BYOB, bring your own booze.
Exactly.
But I wouldn't class bringing beers for me to drink as a gift.
No, but you're not coming empty-handed, expecting them to wait on you.
Yeah,
and the thing I was going to say is, like, if you're going for a dinner with a couple and you're a couple as well, I've been taught by my partner that you should bring a bottle of wine. Because they're providing the food, so at least the least we can do is provide some alcohol that we will consume.
Well, so for example, I went to a barbecue last time I was back, and we did bring a bottle of Prosecco actually, but otherwise, because this is a big thing in Italy of like you go around someone's and you absolutely have to bring something. So even now when we go around, even like close friends here. And my wife says, we haven't got anything. We need to stop at a shop. And I'm always like, look, fuck it. It's okay. They don't mind. But she
I think
very
this might
much
be
says,
a gender thing. Because Stacey's like this as well, my partner.
Even just, how I mentioned that, of going around someone's for dinner. I think it's less common in the UK for, like, I don't know, couples to invite, unless, again, my friends just don't invite me and my wife to these things. But going around someone's for dinner, like that's a common occurrence here. Whilst in England, it doesn't seem to be that common. 'Cause I think it's mainly focused on drinking. I always use the example of when I first came over and I went to a party and it was like university students. So I came with like 20 beers and then they were eating. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? I thought this was a fucking party.
What? It was a group of people that you had never met before?
Well, it was like, they were like, like friends of friends, I suppose. So I was invited with my friend. We went along and I was like expecting like, people to be, being sick in the toilet and like all the rest of it. And we like sat down and had a proper meal. And I was just like, this is weird. Like at university students to have a party and to eat real food and cook real food instead of, like a bag of crisps or something like that. And it was a very strange experience for me.
Yeah, that is different. I'll give you that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would challenge though that as you've aged, you've probably become more accustomed to dinners.
To eating.
To eating more than a bag of crisps.
That eating thing is strange, isn't it? Yeah, I didn't start eating till I was about 30, I think.
Amazing that you survived.
Yeah, but no, you're right. It does seem a bit more normal to do now. So another one, an interesting one here, which is the point where we're going to talk about your podcast, is football. Okay, a big part of English culture or British culture is football. And as Charlie said, we recorded a podcast about that. So make sure you go and listen to that. But going back to what I mentioned about it being a big thing, or like you only grew up in your family kind of thing, you only have your childhood. So for me, football was a massive part of life. Like in school, it was almost like if you don't like football, you're a bit of an idiot kind of thing. But you told me you're not a massive football fan. So what about you? How do you see this? Was it a huge thing for you growing up, for example?
So listeners, I feel like that's a perfect example of an indirect way of saying you're a bit of an idiot. That's exactly what he meant.
Well, at my school, you would have been, okay? Yeah. At my school.
Yeah. My school, it was a little bit posh. It was still a state school, but you still had cricket, rugby and football. They were the main three. And I was quite good at cricket. I could actually I could play football, but I just didn't know the teams and the people. I would kind of be the silent one in the group and just nod along to the football chat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you see the game last night? Oh, yeah. Great game. Game. Brilliant.
Go on the Blues. Yeah. I faked it a lot, but I got to the point where I was like 14, 15, and I thought, you know what? I don't enjoy watching 90 minutes of football most of the time. So I'm just going to be like, nah, I don't watch football that much. And it didn't go down great with the guys.
Okay, right. So it's kind of similar then, right?
Yeah. And it's always been a problem for me because I've moved to quite a few different countries. And if you like football and you're a guy, you can make friends pretty quickly. You just find a local football team and you have a lot to talk about instantly. Whereas I've never been able to rely on that. So it is. Yeah. It is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're a friendly guy anyway, so it's easy to talk to you. There is nothing worse than talking to someone, like being forced to talk to someone, like kind of like you're with your partner and you have to meet her friend, and then you have to talk to the boyfriend. It's like the standard thing to do. He's not talking very much. I mean, this is actually a personal example, and then you think, oh God, I've got nothing to talk about, so I'm gonna put it out there. Do you like football? Because I'm always a bit hesitant to ask that, because I would never say that to someone like you meet for the first time, because it makes you sound like a bit of a hooligan. So I would never actually say that. But when you're really struggling for conversation and you say, do you like football? If they say yes, it's like, oh my God, thank God. Like now we can talk. But on the flip side, if they say no, then you're like, oh, fucking hell. Now what are we going to talk about? It was bad enough before.
It's a big one, a big question. Yeah, because immediately it puts a downer on the situation if they're coming back with a negative. It does.
But like I said, you're a friendly guy anyway, so I can forgive you, okay?
Because good. Hence the third time back on your podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there you go. I mean, that's the perfect demonstration, okay? That you're not a bit of an idiot, okay?
That is interesting that you feel like you would be admitting slight hooliganism. It's a little bit extreme in my opinion.
Well, okay, not being a
hooligan. That.
Okay, not necessarily being a hooligan, but just basically a low-class member of society. I mean, which of course I am, but I don't want other people to know that
straight away.
Yeah,
you want them to guess two nights
exactly.
in.
Yeah, I remember being in a situation once. This was actually here in Palermo, and again, it was talking to someone. Conversation wasn't going well, and there was actually a football match on in this bar that we were in, and I had one eye on the match, and then because the match was there, I said, "Oh, do you like football?" And he said, "No, I hate football, and I've never watched one match in my whole life. What about you?" And I was like, "Well, I've seen the odd match here and there, kind of thing." Because you just feel like an idiot. You think like, oh, like he's basically saying football's for idiots. So I was like, not really into it. Yeah, if it's on,
Definitely don't have a grand on the match behind you. No.
Definitely didn't spend all of my childhood like spending all weekend like watching football, playing football, and talking about football. But sure,
I think there's an extra level of respect that you can have, or the confidence that you can have to admitting to it, because you can actually play football to a very high standard. I remember you admitting when I forced it out of you.
Well, I certainly could, but I've now realised that like footballing age, so now I'm 36, is extremely old, and only recently when I played did I realise that it is actually, strangely enough, from like 32 to like now it's like a totally different situation, and seeing people that were like 20 running rings around me, it's difficult to accept, because you kind of think, no, like I should be doing this, but you can't. It happens to all of us. Time catches up with all of us, unfortunately. In that match particular, I think so. I scored an own goal, and then I think I fell over about 5 times, and then I went off injured after like 15 minutes. So quite a performance it was. But
if you were at a high level, people take it seriously, especially as a young 20-year-old. People go all in And as a mid-30s, I suppose that is quite dangerous. Like I did my knee in earlier this year, and I've had 3 months of walking on crutches because of football. Like that was it's quite an awkward one for your legs. Football.
It is, and you do kind of ask yourself. So again, when I injured myself, I was on crutches for a few days, and you kind of ask yourself, was that really worth it of running around? And now I literally. Man, my wife is having to help me go to the toilet kind of thing. That's when you kind of think, you know what, I'm starting to think this is not a good idea. Maybe just sitting at home watching it on TV is the better option.
Yeah. Well, I also grew up with golf. Did you ever do golf?
Right. Oh, no way. No way.
Golf. Absolutely.
No.
But you do know that like footballers really like golf now. Right?
Yeah, no, they do, but no, I mean, sure, crazy golf, that which was like for people that don't understand what crazy golf is, it's quite difficult to explain. You'd have to, similar to golf, you have to get the ball in the hole, but there was maybe lots of crazy obstacles in the way, in a very small course, let's say.
Yeah, we need to explain that it's just putting. Rolling the ball along the ground, not driving. Yeah. But obviously there's a stereotype towards golf, but over the last 15 years, I'd say that it's got more accessible and more like or less class based. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, because for example, I know quite a few people that do play golf. But again, when you say that, the first thing actually that pops into my mind is now there is football golf, which is fantastic. I'm not sure if you've played this. Again, it always comes back to football. So you're on a golf course, very sophisticated, and you're just like booting a football, trying to get it in. Obviously, the hole's quite a lot bigger, but that's a great game.
Yeah, you like that. Yeah, well, less prone to injury in that situation.
Although saying that, when I did play football golf, didn't obviously do the warm up. If there's one thing I hate in life, it's doing a warm up for anything. That sounds quite bad, but anyway, forget that. So doing a warm up, and so not prepared, and then kicking a ball as hard as you can is. I did have some pain in my legs, but
that's true.
Never mind. Yeah, I even injured myself during the Euros, the European Championship, watching football because I was jumping around so much. So, yeah, just stay away from it. It's the best thing. So I think we've clarified that.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually we'll do the last one, which I think is an interesting one to talk about because certainly over here in Italy, people have the wrong impression of this, which is traditional English breakfasts. Okay, because over here, basically everyone thinks we're eating sausages and bacon like 7 days a week in the morning. So what about you? How often would you have the traditional English breakfast?
I'd say probably 3 times a year. Just as a guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's certainly these days probably even less than that. But even when I was younger, so when I was in my 20s, I went through a phase when it was a bit more regular because I lived near a really nice cafe in London, or CAF, I suppose, the place that would do an English breakfast. And it's great after a night out, isn't it? Like you go out, you wake up late, and then you go to like the CAF at like 10:30, 11. Then it's perfect.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it soaks up all the alcohol. And you feel, well, I often felt quite heavy and like lethargic after that, but it was worth it.
Yeah, if anything, it makes you feel worse. But when you're eating it, it's fantastic.
Yeah, delicious. Very nice. Yeah. Were you a hash brown kind of fella?
Oh, all about the hash browns. All about the hash browns. How can you not have hash browns? Which are, it's kind of difficult. How would you explain hash browns?
Fried, deep fried. Don't know. What's in it?
Is it not just potato?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, let's go with that. And then what's the black pudding? That's another.
I'm not a fan of that. Not a fan of that. I think an important element. So for English breakfast, I think Alan Partridge covered this, is creating barriers for the baked beans, because the baked beans will take over all of your plate. So you need like a sausage as a barrier, maybe some bread the other side, because if you don't, then it's just absolute chaos on that plate.
It is. And I think that some restaurants have gone to the extent of having a little side pot, but is that too much for you?
I kind of feel it's kind of like segregation a little bit. I don't
unfair.
I don't like. Yeah, I kind of feel like the beans are being discriminated against when they're in their own pot. I feel like we should all be together on the plate and all be part of this breakfast together. So no, I'm not a fan of the separate thing. Plus, it's sometimes good to have a bit of the on the sausages, and yeah, it's not for me. Not
for you. Yeah, fair enough. Well argued.
What Yeah. What about you? Do you separate your beans?
Yeah, I like it. I like a bit of separation, because then you can dip the sausage in the beans.
As always, really talking about the hard-hitting big issues on Rock and Roll English.
Yeah. We've got Brexit. We've got the royal family falling apart, and we're talking about dipping sausages in beans. I dip, so I like it.
You're a dipper, sure. Okay, well, I think we've pretty much covered everything there for British culture. If anyone needs to know anything about everything of British culture, just listen to this podcast, or a bit more in-depth, you can listen to Charlie's podcast.
Or listen back to this one on repeat. Yeah.
Yeah. It's up to you. Well, normally at this point I have to say where can people find you, but this is the third time. I think everyone knows, Charlie. Everyone knows where they can find you.
Yeah. If you don't, the BritishEnglishPodcast.com.
Couldn't resist. Okay, well, a pleasure as always talking to you.
Likewise. Yeah, very enjoyable. I really enjoy these kind of recordings where it's a lot more relaxed and you get real English. It's really nice. And I hope your listeners enjoyed it.
I'm sure they did. Okay, well, thanks a lot, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that episode about British culture. Remember, you can find Charlie at the BritishEnglishPodcast.com, I think. If you just put his name into Google, you will find him. I hope you learned something today. If there's one thing I hope you really did learn, it's that baked beans should not be discriminated against when having an English breakfast, okay? Do not leave them off the plate. We are all together, okay? Anyway, I will see you all very soon, people, but in the meantime, just keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.